On November 29, 1992, Jets defensive lineman Dennis Byrd collided with a teammate and shattered a vertebra in his neck. He was carted off the field and his uniform was cut off his back. Partially paralyzed, after 3 months of rehab, he learned to walk again.
Every physical possession that I have, were I to have the genuine opportunity to trade them in for one more game, one more play, I would do it. Life has its everyday struggles. Having a spinal cord injury, the recovery, and the things that people can't see are at times mind-numbingly frustrating. The genuine truth is, for the last 18 years, I've still been competing.
We're back at it again here on the State of Football. Rick Serritella broadcasting live from the Jersey Shore on this beautiful Tuesday, August 31st. Did you miss me? Season 2, episode 21, part 280. We're going to have Russell Lande in just a moment. I'm all fired up, revved up, ready to go. Chop it up and talk some football. I haven't been here since Thursday. It feels like forever. Big shout out to my guys, the Prospect Profits, holding it down on Friday. How about that? Jack Despo. I saw it, the season debut on the State of Football. I was listening to it on the way up to my drive to Boston, and I'm getting used to the feedback. It's been a while here. So we had a good time. Shout out to Mook Williams, Michael Langley. Great weekend up in Boston. We're back at it again. You saw that great intro, little memorandum to Dennis Byrd, born this day, August 31st. 1946, one of the most inspirational men of all time in pro football history. So we will honor quite a few men throughout the day. Jim Fossil, the late great, also born on this day as well. Jim Finks, what a day. Also, we might as well get the birthdays out of the way now. Larry Fitzgerald, 38. Have we heard the last of him? We'll talk about that as we get into our NFL previews. And Tom Coughlin, big 75 today for TC, who penned a great article in the New York Times just dealing with his caregiving to his wife, Judy, who's succumbed to a brain disease, which the J Fund is really dedicated to that kind of cancer. So, hey, we're going to buckle up, talk NFL divisions. We'll talk about Dennis Byrd later on in the show. We'll talk about the Bishop Sycamore disaster, the Trent Dilfer video that's gone viral, what's going on with Deshaun Watson. We'll get some CFL musings with Russell Lande here in just a minute. But also today is NFL Cutdown Day, and that's a tough one for a lot of young men. I saw already a handful of Hub football players who have been released, and I am sure a handful of them are going to resurface soon or sign practice squad deals. By the way, we have a big Hub football announcement coming up in the show later on today. Stay tuned for that. And so let's welcome in the star of every Tuesday, the Tutorial Tuesday, as we like to say it. It's Russell Lande, of course, a veteran scout of the NFL, CFL, XFL, of course, UCLA, cutting his teeth there. And now currently in the CFL with the Montreal Allouettes, currently the director of U.S. Scouting, previously with the Calgary Stampeders, his second stint with the Allouettes. And so there he is, Russell Lande, joining us here right now on the State of Football. Good morning, Russell. How are you today?
I'm doing great, man. It's always good to see the big cheese and catch up a little bit and talk a little football.
Yeah, and it's always perfect timing on a Tutorial Tuesday, like right outside the Jersey Shore studios. We have the garbage men taking out the trash, Emilio Estevez. But hey, a lot to get to. Let's start off with NFL Cutdown Day, because I saw a tweet from Mook actually with, on the agent side of things, it's a tough deal. Now it's a rough deal to try to find this guy a new home, see if he can latch on with a practice squad, what the other opportunities. Could North come calling? Have they been negged? Have they been placed on a negotiation list in the CFL? There's going to be a lot of moving and shaking today, starting today. I already see some of the names. We'll get into that in just a second coming down the wire. But how are you approaching this cut down day, navigating it again somewhat through the pandemic, and the Montreal Allouettes, I know, always looking to upgrade the roster? Russ, what are you keeping an eye on here?
Well, I think the big thing that people have to understand is, for at least for the CFL, we're really looking at these guys that are getting cut. We're looking at them for 2022, 2023, because any player that was in training camp this year, no matter how bad, quote unquote, he may have played or participated and looked for the team that released him, he was in an NFL training camp. So he was good enough to get there. So in his mind, he is going to hope and work out and stay in shape in the hope that he gets an NFL opportunity, because the money in the NFL is life-altering, generational money. The money in the CFL is how to earn a good living and have a nice life. There's a big difference. So a lot of players, the lifelong dream has been playing the NFL. The money, obviously, is very different. They're going to sort of wait at home. Our job in the CFL, and what I'm trying to oversee with the Allouettes, is making sure we get every player that gets cut or ends up on a practice squad evaluated, correctly graded, and we'll try to neg list those players that we think, fit what we're doing in Montreal, those players that also we think would have an interest in coming to Canada. There are some guys that get cut that would be stars up there, but probably aren't going to be very interested in coming to Canada. So it's a real weird game of sort of chess, because you're not just trying to find the best player. You're trying to find the best player that's willing to come to Canada, that has a passport, and that has a background that will allow them across the border. So there's a lot of things that go into it. But I think the biggest thing that our GM, Danny, has sort of stressed to all of us in the scouting department is, let's focus on getting all these guys properly graded, properly written up, and that way we can have smart, educated discussions to make sure we neg list and approach the correct guys to sign, whether it's getting a few this year or more likely getting guys for the next 2 years to make us a better team in the future. And it's a tough spot for players. I mean, I feel for them. Their whole life has been get to the NFL, become a professional football player. For many of these guys, that's been their whole focus since they were 5 or 6. And many of them are being told today that that dream is over, at least for now. And that's a brutal thing to have to tell guys. And I can tell you, both from my time in the NFL having to be the Turk and my time in the CFL having to be the guy that tells guys the dream is over. It's not fun. A lot of these guys, and Andrew Brandt, a longtime NFL front office guy and agent, as he said yesterday on Twitter, he said on Saturday, he said a lot of these guys may not realize it, but this game will be the last time they ever put on football pads. And that's a hard reality for a lot of great young men who've worked their whole lives, put in countless hours, committed, made sacrifices to get to this point. And to see that that dream is ending is very harsh. But it's part of the business. It's part of the bad side of the business, what makes it unfortunate and unfun to participate in.
Yeah, and one thing that comes to mind, we're talking to Russell Lande here, Rick Serritella, the State of Football NFL Cutdown Day. And, of course, NFL Draft Bible Consulting helps players and agents. And one of the drills that we went through was the cutdown process. And, hey, if you're a player and you get cut, you get told they want to see your iPad these days, Russ. It's not a playbook anymore. It's an iPad. And so you get that call, notify your agent immediately. Don't let the NFL teams have to wait until they see it on the waiver wire notice, because that could take a few hours. Notify your agent immediately, place that call so that he can work the phone lines and get you linked up somewhere else. And so that was, one of the many drills that we talked about and discussed. But I was looking as you were talking, a guy like Brett Rippon, that was surprising, because Denver, they don't really have a quarterback. We'll talk more about that with our division predictions. But I was surprised to see Brett Rippon. I was curious to see if Mark Rippon ever played up north. He didn't, but he did play for the Rochester of the Indoor Football League. So you wonder if Brett Rippon would be a guy interested going up north. And I noticed Duke Williams and Nate Holley, two guys that have had success up north. And you wonder maybe if those guys might consider returning to the CFL. I
mean, I think there's going to be consideration, but I will say for Rippon, I think part of where he got bit is the fact that the NFL no longer do many teams carry 3 active quarterbacks. Most teams go with 2 and put a guy in the practice squad. I don't really agree with it, but that's their decision. I would bet that Rippon will be on their practice squad if he doesn't get claimed by another team, because he's athletic and he's got a live arm. The accuracy is an issue, but he'll get another opportunity, I believe, with Denver or in the NFL if another team wants to claim him. In terms of Holly and Williams, I would expect they would pursue the NFL for the rest of this year, because I think both of them probably feel that they're close to at least getting to be on a PR. And a PR over the course of an NFL season is over $100,000. That's a lot of money. So I would expect they'll both pursue that opportunity, at least for now. They're both good enough to come back up to the CFL and be stars. But I would expect that they would both wait till 2022 to at least consider the CFL.
All right, fair enough. A couple other notables, Seth Williams and Justin Hardy at the wide receiver position. I expect them to be re-signed. KJ Sales, who did very well for the Chargers, I believe he will be picked up, if not practice squad. Javion Hawkins, the joystick, underclassman running back, I believe, who came out of Louisville, gone from the Falcons, who don't necessarily have a dependable back. So that was interesting to see. We'll continue to monitor that throughout the day over at the NFL Draft Bible. Make sure you check out the website, NFLDraftBible.com, now part of the Fan Nation Network on Sports Illustrated. You mentioned being the Turk, delivering that news, having to deal with grown men crying, Russ. You see Craig T. Smith in the chat. First guy he had to cut, cried while signing the papers. I mean, it's just a gut punch, right? Do you remember the first guy that you've had to tell that he was cut?
I don't remember the first guy, but I definitively remember the first week I had to do it, or the first day I had to do it, because I remember being told that morning, hey, we're going to need you to go get the players and stuff like that. And I said, okay. And they gave me the list of guys. And I went downstairs, and this was at the Rams facility in St. Louis. And I remember walking downstairs, and as I'm walking down, I'm like, wow, I don't feel so good. What's going on? And I went right into the training room and just threw up into the trash can there. And I think I must have made 5 or 6 trips in there to throw up that morning, because it's heartbreaking. Because you try to find the kids when they're not around the rest of the team, because you don't want to inform them, and you don't want to let them be seen having to get the bad news. So you really do your best, but sometimes there's nothing you can do. You get down to the locker room and you're waiting on a guy, and the guy just will not leave the crowd of the area, which some guys do, I think, is a sort of, hey, as long as I'm around guys, I'm not getting cut. I know it's going to work out and things like that. And it's harsh when you have to walk up to a group of 6 and tap one guy and be like, hey, I really need to chat with you. And they all know what that is, because it's cut down day and they know who you are, because I'd been the cut guy there for 2 years, but it hadn't been in that building. We'd always been in sort of crazy environments during the move to St. Louis, so it wasn't as structured. It's not fun. It's not fun being that guy. I think the biggest thing that players have told me over the years is, as long as you're honest with them and treat them with respect, that goes a long way. And a lot of them want to know, hey, what did you see? Did you see anything on film or in practice? And if you can point out and talk to them about specific things, they generally know what they've had issues with in camp. And if you can express the same things to them, they at least feel relieved, saying, okay, what you saw is the same thing that they thought. And it makes them a little more calm about the whole situation. But I've had guys cry. I've had guys break down. I've had guys run into another room. I've also had guys start screaming and yelling and throwing stuff. So it goes all directions. One of the things I always try to remember is, even for the guys who lose it and start screaming and yelling and cursing, is to remember being cut from a football team is basically like being fired for a regular job. So you have to remember, emotions are going to be high, and you never want to hold it against a young man if he flips out and starts screaming and cursing. You don't want to put in his report, oh, bad kid, he freaked out, we never want to bring this kid in the building again, because you have to take a deep breath and say, what is it like to be fired? Almost everybody in the world gets fired once, twice, 5 times during their careers. So you try to take a deep breath and say, hey, I know what these kids are going through. It's a horrible thing to have to go through, and try to be as best you can in terms of honest with them and try to help them through the process. It is not fun. It is not easy. I just had to cut when I was in Montreal in training camp, I think over 25 guys I personally cut and met with them and talked with them and discussed it. And almost to a man, every one of them walked out of there shaking my hand saying, hey, man, I appreciate your being honest with me. And you just got to do it the right way. And I think players handle it a lot better.
Great job there, Russell Lande, with Rick Serritella talking NFL cutdowns. Not a great experience as we kind of transition to another unfavorable experience, which I saw this video floating around yesterday, Russ, and I saw, and I immediately said to myself, well, that's not good. And then
Trent Dilfer doesn't like when his players.
And I didn't realize it was Trent Dilfer. And so, Trent, I guess, had a sideline tirade that, back in my day, no big deal to me. Play that again, Samantha, if you can, so Russ can see it and our listening audience. So, here he is on the sideline. This is actually a former player's son, I think Phil Dawson's son. And, I saw it yesterday. I didn't realize it was Trent Dilfer. I said, hey, listen, my coach kind of reacted that way and no big deal to me. But in today's society, today's sensitive era, I said, oh boy, that guy's probably losing a job. This morning, I saw it happens to be Trent Dilfer. What's your reaction from that video there?
I think it's just like when you cut players and it's like being fired. I think people have to realize, and I'm not saying you want to condone behavior like this, but I think with anything, you have to realize the situation. It's a very emotional sport. There's a lot of aggressiveness on the sideline, players, coaches competing. So obviously you don't want to do that. But at the same time, everybody makes mistakes. Everybody does things that probably they wish they hadn't done. And I'm sure Trent wishes this had not happened. But you don't want to end somebody's career over something that, hey, I know from what I know of Trent, this is a good man. And this is someone who really has a lot of respect for the game of football and does his best to mentor these young kids. So, yeah, is it ideal? No. But let's remember the situation. Let's remember that on the sideline, emotions run high. It's a very, very high. The game of football on the sideline, it is a high wire act controlling those emotions. And I think you just have to take a deep breath and understand, yeah, he screamed at him. I understand that. And he said, get out of here, move over there. It wasn't right. But at the same time, let's also take a deep breath and realize there's a lot worse things that go on in society. Let's take a deep breath. You know that this guy is doing what he can for the benefit of these kids. He could be doing things to earn a lot more money in television, but he's chosen to do this because he feels he can help these young men in terms of providing leadership and guidance based on his experiences playing football. So I get it. It may be what he did was not correct, but let's not go overboard. It was a quick incident. Nobody was punched. Nobody was beaten up. Let's take a deep breath. I know for a fact you've heard Trent come out and say he's not happy with how it went down. You can be sure this will not happen again. And I would love to hear what the young man says. What preceded this? Why did it get to this point? So, like I said, this isn't what you want to do, but let's also give people the benefit of the doubt. Like I said, it is a high wire act of high emotions on the sidelines. And not everybody all the time is going to be, I'd say nobody all the time is going to be able to control those emotions. I don't care who you are. Jimmy Johnson, Bill Belichick, nobody controls your emotions every single minute you're on the field.
Paul Bear Bryant would have been fired before he even got started, Russ. And that's what's scary about social media, right? Because you see this snippet, you don't see anything that preceded this. You don't hear anything about it, I think it was Phil Dawson's son. I'm pretty sure. So
I've heard that, yeah.
Being a former player's son, there's probably a built-in relationship, right? It might be a little bit more, deeper than coach and player. Maybe there's a person, maybe they go on vacation together. Maybe they're friendly off the field. Maybe, the first biggest thing that our coach installed was discipline. Maybe the kid needs some discipline. I mean, that's sometimes what football coaches have to do. So,
and also, let's remember, even if it was just losing his cool and screaming and yelling, I would bet, knowing that this young man did grow up with a father who's played in the NFL and still is kicking for the 49ers for 20 years, I'm sure this kid understands, hey, things happen. I've heard the stories from my dad. This is going to happen on the sideline sometimes. People do. It's a high wire emotional act. So I think we just have to take a deep breath and realize things like this happen. Nobody got beat up. Nobody got thrown over and tossed into the garbage pail or anything like that. He screamed at him. He rode him down the sideline and screamed at him and yelled at him and said, stand there. Yeah, is it right? No. But is it the end of the world? No. So let's take a deep breath. Trent is a good man. And like I said, he could be earning a lot more money doing television, but he chose to be a head coach at this school because he feels he can help young men and teach them the right way to go about using football to build the character traits to be successful. So I think we just have to take a deep breath. Not saying it was right. It definitely wasn't. But at the same time, you don't want to start getting into firing people over things like this.
Yeah, and Phil Dawson's still doing them. How about that? Russell Lande always dropping gems on him here, the State of Football.
One of the best in the last 20 years.
Yeah, for sure. Still doing it. Part of the Fan Nation Network on Sports Illustrated. Rick Serritella, Russell Lande, you there. Brian Beasley, Craig T. Smith in the chat room. Everybody else tuned in, primed in. Dan Cassidy, I know you're tuned in watching. Easton Sports, Tom Goodhines, I know you're tuned in watching. Let us know when we're going to drop the hub announcement. By the way, I don't know, we won't spend too much time on it, but did you see this Bishop Sycamore story at all, Russ?
I did see it. I didn't really get into the nitty gritty, but it's crazy that how in the world does a major TV network not do their homework to find out about this before they decide to publicize it? That to me is, I think, the craziest part, because I know, or at least
also IMG though. IMG, this was the second time IMG actually scheduled them, so they fooled IMG twice.
Which makes you really wonder. It's like, are our schools doing a lot of their research, or is the demand for having an opponent so high, and the demand from ESPN to have something to put on the air so high that they don't really dive that deep? If someone calls and says, hey, we have a school, we've got a tradition, we're playing this, and we want to get out there and play. I mean, it's surprising because everything is so easy to find out nowadays. It's not like it was 30 years ago. You could hide a lot of stuff. Everything is available nowadays.
Even more remarkable is they were busted like 2 or 3 years ago for doing the same shenanigans under a different name and affiliation. So what a racket. If you're not familiar with this story, check it out. The Bishop Sycamore School. It's wild. Also, the Deshaun Watson rumors, before we get into our predictions, have been wild here. Russ, I'm curious to get your thoughts. The Dolphins have been rumored as the front runner. I saw the Eagles were kind of in the mix, and then they traded for Gardner Minshew. So it says here, Tom Pelissero reporting this morning that Houston is drawing a hard line. They want at least 3 firsts and some. The and some being 2 second-round picks, but 3 first-round picks for a guy who's under investigation now. I've heard that a lot of these cases have already been proven to be BS, and that's just what I'm hearing. I didn't say that before the cancel culture comes for my job. So, what's your take from a GM perspective? How do you justify giving up that kind of equity, even if he is innocent? You really won't know what his status is, if he's going to be suspended or not for quite some time. Can you justify giving up all those picks?
No, you can't do that now. There's no way, and I don't think there's any chance Miami would make that trade right now. I believe Miami, everything they're doing in terms of building has been fantastic. I think they're on the verge of a really good season, and I think they want to see what Tua does. I think a lot of people felt Tua was an elite quarterback prospect, worthy of being actually the first overall pick if he hadn't been dealing with injury concerns when he came into the league. I think it's more on Houston's side. I don't think that Houston is going to do anything until this is resolved legally, because I think to Houston, the question becomes, how can we trade him before it's resolved? Well, to trade him before it's resolved, you're taking future picks, probably not as many, and they're probably tied to if he doesn't play or if he plays and how many games. So you could be giving away a franchise quarterback for picks 3 or 4 years down the road. Or do you say, in the NFL, where the salary cap is basically $200 million and owners waste money on all sorts of things, Do you say, you know what, it's probably better for our organization to spend $10 million, pay him for this year, and keep his rights while this works itself out in the legal system? And if we have to pay him this year, and a year from now, or not even a year, 8 months from now, everything's been settled and there is no criminal prosecution and he's not going to prison, then all of a sudden you turn around and you'll get 3 or 4 or 5 number 1 picks for this guy if everything gets cleared. So wouldn't it make sense for Houston, although no one likes to waste $10 million, to spend $10 million, keep him as your third quarterback, and just see where this goes? Because they're not going to get any value now. It's just not going to happen. No team's going to offer that. But if, like I said, 6 months from now, come February, everything's been adjudicated and he's not going to prison, there's no criminal charges, and the league decides he's not being suspended because there were no criminal charges, they'll get at least 3, if not 4 or 5 first-round picks, because this guy is a franchise quarterback, and even in February, you're talking 26 years old.
Yeah, and I was going to say, too, the Dolphins are the one team with that kind of equity and the extra first-round picks to give that up. I'm looking at Miami. You insert Deshaun Watson, that's potentially a Super Bowl contender. I mean, that's the tough out in the AFC. So let's transition into NFL predictions. Russell, Lande, Rick Serritella. This is the state of football. Tuesday, August 31st.
Let me add one other thing there. You mentioned Miami. Isn't it almost better for them that it waits till next offseason? Because now they get a year to
I think the trade deadline, you got to re-examine. If he gets cleared and Goodell says, hey, there's no suspension, why wait? This team's built to win now. They can take that salary right now. And as far as I'm concerned, the AFC is wide open. Why not?
But here's the thing. When's that trade deadline? October, right? So you're 10 weeks in, right? So here's the thing, though. What if they're 7-2 and 2 is playing like the guy that everybody thought should be the first pick? Gives them a little time to look at the guy. Hey, they didn't take him 5th overall because they thought he was a bad quarterback prospect. And if all of a sudden he's playing really well, maybe they say, you know what? We don't have to give up 3 or 4 number 1s. We feel comfortable with the guy we got, and we're going to build with those 3 or 4 1s. We're going to put even more talent around this kid. So I think for Miami, it makes sense because we know it's not going to be resolved next month. This is going to be at least 2 or 3 months before it's resolved. I doubt it'll be resolved before this year's trade deadline. So why push it? Why not wait, see what happens? Give Tua that chance. Give him the year to show.
I don't know. If I'm the Dolphins, I pull the trigger immediately because now if he gets cleared or he comes back, he plays well.
But you're not going to give up. Are you giving up 3 or 4 1s right now?
Well, to your point, you're going to have to give up more if you want him down the road. You're saying 4 or 5.
I don't think Houston's willing to give him for less than 3 right now.
Yeah, so I'd pull the trigger because to me, Deshaun Watson is arguably a top 3. I mean, outside of Mahomes.
Maybe, I'd say he's top 5.
Mahomes, Rodgers, Brady.
And there might be a few others that are in that mix.
Josh Allen, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, there are a few others. But let's also remember, when Deshaun came out, very high grades, whatever it may have been. But let's remember, Tua had even higher grades coming out.
I know, but Deshaun's a proven commodity. You're getting when can you get a guaranteed top 5 NFL quarterback? These opportunities don't come along.
But he's not going to be good when he comes. This year is not going to be a good player for you. You're going to say he's going to come to a new city with all the stuff going on, and hey, here's a playbook. You've never learned it.
I mean, look at the team he was working with last year, and he
but still
played pretty well.
But it was
nothing around
you
him.
knew the playbook, though. That matters. You know the playbook. You know your teammates. You're in comfortable surroundings. I'm just saying, I think it's unrealistic to expect him to come in and immediately play at a high level because of
I'd feel better about him than Tua.
Well, I hear you, but this gives them a choice of both. See, that's the thing. No one's getting fired in Miami if they go 2-14 this year, because everybody's excited about the future. So you say you get the year, you get to look at Tua.
Well, this is what, year 3 or year 4? I don't. If I'm Miami, I don't want to hear about the future anymore. The future is now.
I get it, but I think everybody's excited by where they're going. I mean, the last 2 years they've gone from the Flores' first year. They made drastic improvements the last year. They were on the verge of the playoffs. So I think a lot of people are very, very excited about where they are. I think this gives them a year to look at Tua, see him whether he's going to blossom or not, and they're not forced to trade the future for what may or may not be a player that they get to keep. Because the thing is, it's not going to be resolved in time for them to make a trade and know he's going to ever play in the league again. That's why there's no way they can make it happen this year.
Well, and to your point, they were on the verge of the playoffs. You know why they didn't make it? Because they were flip-flopping quarterbacks.
Exactly.
Right? Yep. So, hey, it's the state of football here. Like I said, Russ, let me get through the transition. Tuesday, August 31st, Season 2, Episode 21, Part 280. I told you we're going to have division predictions, and I was transitioning into the AFC East, where the Miami Dolphins, with Deshaun Watson, might have a chance to win it. But otherwise, I think it's just a battle for second place. New England, I believe, will also be fluttering around that 500 mark, sniffing around the playoffs. The Jets, I mean, let's get serious. To me, this is the Buffalo Bills division, and everybody else is just trying to fight in for a wild card.
You know, I mean, I think Buffalo goes in, no doubt, as a favorite, but I honestly think it's going to be a lot closer than people think. I think New England is going to be a much better team this year, getting a bunch of their players back that opted out, having, it looks like, 2 healthy quarterback options. And Miami is not a team to overlook. So I think this is going to be a division that comes down to the last 2 or 3 games of the season. For whatever reason, and people probably think I'm crazy, I really think New England's going to win this division. I really do. I think you're going to see Buffalo play well, get 10, 11 wins. But I think New England's going to come out this year and play a lot better than they did last year. And you're going to see them back in that 10 to 12 win area.
Return of the Mac, we'll just call it, with Mac Jones.
Yep.
And by the way, for all you out in Vegas or Jersey, New England plus 350 to win the division. So there you go. If you want a nice little value play, the Patriots, they actually have Buffalo favored, Miami for second, New England for third. And the Jets at plus 2,200 if you want to go wild. All right, AFC North, Russ. This, to me, is very tough to predict. Vegas is predicting Baltimore. Cleveland is not too far behind. Pittsburgh, who Mike Tomlin now incredibly has not had a losing season in 14 consecutive years. And then the Cincinnati Bengals. You know, I could argue take the Bengals out of this division. I could state a case for any of the other 3. How do you see the AFC North playing out?
You know, firstly, I agree. I think the Bengals, I think it's going to be an ugly year. I could see them in that 2 to 3 win area again because it's going to be hard to get an in-division win. So they're in a bad spot. Pittsburgh, I think they're improved, but I do think that offensive line is still going to cause some big issues. So I think they're a notch below the next 2. And I think what's interesting to me, when I look at Cleveland and Baltimore, to me, Cleveland is a better team when it comes to the playoffs. But I think during the regular season, Baltimore is going to win that division because on a week in and week out basis, teams are having to adjust to playing traditional defenses, and then they have to play the Baltimore run option offense. So Baltimore's going to put up a lot of points, beat up on a lot of teams, but I think, and they'll win the division. But I think when it gets to the playoffs, I think Cleveland is a much better suited team for success in the playoffs because their passing attack is a more well-balanced and takes advantage of the whole field. So to me, Baltimore wins the division, but I think Cleveland wins a game in the playoffs. I don't think Baltimore does.
Good point. You know, Cleveland, though, this is really the year they need to do it because we talk about how they need to take that next step over the hump. It's if they don't get it done this year, Russ, I mean, what year are they going to get it done? And again, I like the addition of Najee Harris. I like the weapons that Big Ben Roethlisberger has in Minnesota with Chase Claypool and Deontay Johnson and Juju Smith-Schuster. I think there's some weapons there. Eric Ebron. I mean, there's some underrated weapons there at plus 400, by the way. Pittsburgh would be the value play. Baltimore at plus 120. Cleveland plus 145. Cincinnati plus 2,500. No siree there. Okay.
One thing I got to add, just a note. You talk about Mike Tomlin, 14 straight years, no losing seasons. One of the reasons, you just have to look at their roster, is one of the reasons they're probably going to be set up for success again, even though I didn't like him, and I know you did when he came out. What other team that's been winning so consistently and has a guy that's whether he's in or out or whatever, as a Hall of Fame quarterback, says, you know what? This guy that was taken as a first-round pick a few years ago, quarterback, we're going to bring him in. He's going to be a third. We're going to teach him. We're going to work with the physical skills. It wouldn't shock me if in 2023, Haskins is their starting quarterback and becomes their guy for the next decade, because nobody in the NFL will deny the kid's ability to throw the ball, the kid's athleticism for a quarterback. He may not be a big-time runner, but he's athletic for a quarterback. He has all the physical tools. So that, to me, is a great example of why the Steelers continue to win, is they're thinking now, but they're also thinking years down the road. Hey, they're thinking we got a value. We're getting a former first-round pick at quarterback to work with for a year or two. I think it's a great move. I think the Steelers rarely do things that don't make sense.
No, Kevin Colbert, outstanding job. You talk about the physical attributes too. Pocket passer, strong arm, can get the ball down the field. They wouldn't have to change the offense very much if Haskins, and who I heard is going to make the roster. And oh, by the way, Ben Roethlisberger dropped about 15 pounds, I hear, looking in mighty fine shape. So don't ever count out those Pittsburgh Steelers, even though that season didn't end the way they wanted it to, right? Now, the South, and I'll save my NFC prediction for when we get there, but both in the AFC and the NFC, I think this picture is as clear as it gets. I mean, can anybody really compete with the Tennessee Titans in this division at this point?
It's going to be hard. I mean, I think Indianapolis may have more talent at a lot of positions, but their quarterback is unknown. So I agree. I think Tennessee will win this division, but I do think the Colts will go to the playoffs. To me, the more interesting thing is I think Houston is going to be better, not only than we expect, but I think they're going to finish with a better record than Jacksonville. I think Tyrod Taylor, while he may not be a star, for this type of team, he's a perfect guy because he doesn't make mistakes. He's a veteran guy, plays within himself. I wouldn't be surprised if they win 7 or 8 games this year because they won't make mistakes. They'll play smart football, even if they're not a very good team. I think Jacksonville, this could be a rude year for Trevor Lawrence, his rude awakening to the NFL, because I do not think they're a particularly good team.
Going to be interesting to see how Urban Meyer and Trevor Lawrence handle all the losing, right? Because they're going to lose. They're going to lose this season probably more than their entire collegiate career combined. That's amazing. So I agree, though. Tennessee's the team to beat. Vegas has it that way at -120, which I think that's a great stock. You know, I would invest in that. Let's move over to the AFC West, Russ, and barring a Patrick Mahomes injury, I mean, come on, let's get serious. The Chargers, I think, are a team who could maybe take the next step and become a playoff team. I still think the Raiders are just not there, and the Broncos, you know, I can't take them serious right now with that quarterback situation. How do you have the AFC West?
You know, to me, this one is a very tough one beyond Kansas City. I mean, to me, Kansas City is a slam dunk. I mean, think about it. Everybody said their offensive line was their big issue. They lost in the Super Bowl because of that. They improved their offensive line so much that Laurent Duvernay-Tardif, who was a starter and got a massive contract when they won the Super Bowl, is now their 6th lineman. He's not even a starter this year. So it tells you how much they've upgraded that offensive line. You know, when I look at the rest of the teams, I see major questions everywhere. I look at the Chargers, and it's okay. Yes, Justin Herbert, I think he's going to be very good, but he is a second-year quarterback with a brand-new head coach, a brand-new offensive coordinator. There's going to be some ups and downs throughout the season. Vegas may have a lot of issues in terms of just an overall lack of talent, but they do have, in my opinion, by far the second-best quarterback in the division, and they have the most stability in terms of their offensive schemes and stuff. And I look at Denver, and Bridgewater may not be great, but last year, before he had that injury that he had to battle through the last 5 or 6 games of the year, he was playing pretty good football. So I don't think they're going to be great in Denver, but I think he's going to be good, and I think that defense is going to be improved. I think Kansas City is going to win. I think those next 3 teams are going to be in a battle. One of them might get to 9 or 10 wins and be able to compete for a wild card. I don't think any of the teams outside of Kansas City is really a playoff caliber team. And I hate to say that. As you know, I'm a Chargers guy, and I want to see them go out and pull this thing off and go beat Kansas City for the division. But They didn't win the division in the final 8 years Phillip Rivers was the quarterback there. I don't see them winning the division this year with a second-year quarterback at the helm.
Well, they've been disappointing year after year, but I am a Justin Herbert believer. I do think he will take the next step.
I am too, brother. He's awfully good.
And I think he will take the next step, though. I like Herbert more than Carr, and I think because of that, the Chargers will finish second. I don't see the Chiefs losing more than 3 games. I saw the over-under was 12.5 for season victories. I think that's an easy over. All right, let's transition. It's the state of football here, part of the Fan Nation Network on Sports Illustrated, RIC, and a place to be, broadcasting live from New Jersey. Of course, Russell Lande chiming in. We'll get to some Montreal Allouettes before we wrap things up, but we got some time here to review the NFC and the NFC least, Russ. A division nobody wanted to win a year ago. To me, I don't know. Like, Washington won this division. They've got pretty much the same roster back. To me, they upgraded the quarterback position. However, the Cowboys are favored to win, according to Las Vegas. Explain this one to me.
To me, this is the easiest, and that's why I'll probably be wrong, the easiest division to pick, because to me, there's Washington and 3 bad teams. I mean, I unless Dallas's offensive line got dramatically better, I mean, they've been battling injuries for years. They have not played well consistently for a long time. To me, I think Washington's defense is going to be amongst the top 5 in the league. I think that offensive line is actually a pretty good offensive line, and now they have a quarterback who, yes, he's going to turn it over, but he's going to score points. They're going to score enough points that elite defense of theirs is going to make it hard for them to be beaten. I think they're going to win 10, 11 games. I think Philadelphia could be in a really, really bad situation. Starting Hurts as a quarterback with what I think is a woefully bad offensive line. I mean, that could get ugly quickly. The Giants, I think they're going to be competitive, might win 6 or 7 games, but I'm not sure. And Dallas, to me, they're a bit of a wild card, but I just don't think they're good enough to really compete with Washington. To me, Dallas is a team that's going to struggle to get to 500.
Yeah, I think Dallas just has too many ifs, right?
Yes,
if
exactly.
The offensive line comes back, if Dak can prove healthy, if Zeke returns to form, if CeeDee Lamb projects and becomes the player that they think he will be, and if the secondary plays a lot better. There's just too many ifs there for the Cowboys.
Think about this, man. How many years did Mike McCarthy have Aaron Rodgers? And how many winning seasons did they have?
Mm-hmm.
And now they're dealing with, not that Dak isn't a really good quarterback, but he's coming off injury, a team that has been beaten up on the offensive line. I mean, and defensively, I just don't see it. So it's like, how are they going to all of a sudden start winning? I just don't see that.
Yeah, we talked about it last year. He was supposed to have rediscovered his creativeness calling plays. I didn't see it. Baldinger actually says, be on the lookout for this Eagles offensive line. Even though they're young and unproven, he thinks they can be competent. And I actually give them a better chance than the Giants because of that, because I don't know if you saw Andrew Thomas the other night.
It didn't look good. No, I agree. The Eagles could very well compete, but I think all those teams, well, I shouldn't say all, the Giants and Eagles, I think you're talking 3-4 wins. That to me it's going to be a challenge for them to be better than that.
Well, somebody's got to win when they play each other. True. I agree. They do. And that's one of the good things about being in a bad division. You can pick up 2 or 3 wins in division when you're not particularly good, and then just maybe win a few outside of it, and you get to 6 or 7, and it doesn't look like such a disaster. Yeah. So Washington at plus 225 is one of my value picks that I see here with all the odds you might be able to get. Vegas is pretty good with projecting these things. Washington, I think they kind of missed the mark. So, hey, Russell Lande, Rick Serritella just trying to open up some eyes and some possibilities as we shift over to the black and blue NFC North. Always a weekly battle when the Packers, Vikings, and Bears, oh my. Oh, yes, by the way, Detroit plays in this division as well. But to me, Russ, I think Green Bay still's got it going. To me, it'll be hard for both the Vikings and the Bears to both get into the playoffs. I think it comes down to the fact that Matt Nagy there in Chicago is really going to do himself a disservice, because going with Andy Dalton over Justin Fields could cost him a game or two, and that could cost him the playoffs and ultimately cost him his job. But I see Green Bay, Minnesota, then Chicago.
Well, first I'll say this, and I think it's important to say, is we don't know what's going on in the building. We don't know why they might be leaning towards Dalton. Fields may just not, maybe it taken a little time. It doesn't always happen immediately. Some of the great quarterbacks have sat for half a season. We don't know. So there's a reason. I don't think Matt Nagy's doing something just to do something. There's a reason behind what he's doing. I honestly don't know how much of a difference it would make. I think they're not a good team. I'd be stunned if they win 5 or 6 games this year, regardless of their quarterback. To me, this is another division like the NFC East, where Green Bay is head and shoulders above everybody. Minnesota has a chance. They're very talented, just whether their quarterback can be consistent enough to get them above 8 or 9 wins. And after that, Detroit, they're rebuilding. But they're right now in a better situation quarterback-wise than Chicago until Fields is ready. And then Chicago obviously jumps Detroit at quarterback. But until Fields takes the field and proves he's ready, I just don't see them having much chance of winning. So to me, this is Green Bay running away with it, and Minnesota hopefully winning enough to get themselves at least in the debate to go to the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, listen, if Kirk Cousins can just steer that ship with Dalvin Cook, Alexander Madison, who I could argue is maybe the best backup running back in the league, you just don't hear about him. Going back to the NFC East, shout out to Jarrett Patterson. I'm hoping he makes the 53-man roster. But that's the other thing we didn't mention. They added Curtis Samuel, Jarrett Patterson to go with Antonio Gibson, but I'll keep it over in the NFC North. The Vikings, they got Jefferson, they got Thielen, they got Dalvin Cook. Like Cousins, you just need to steer the ship. Yep. They got a shot. That defense with Zimmer, hopefully it recaptures some of the old form. But Green Bay, I think, is all day at minus 165. Now, I told you, the South over in the NFC, again, to me, Tampa Bay is head and shoulders above. I don't know who's going to come in second. I could flip a coin here. It could be Carolina. I don't love Darnold. It could be the Falcons because they do have quarterback stability. It could be the Saints, but I don't know either because there seems to be a lot of rifts lately in New Orleans. So shout out to all of our friends out there in New Orleans that lost all the power and are dealing with Hurricane Ida. But in terms of the NFC South, Russ, can anybody here topple the Bucs, who, by the way, finished second? The Saints actually won this division a year ago. But just like Kansas City, I don't see Tampa Bay losing more than 3 or 4 games.
Well, I mean, I think Tampa Bay is clearly the best team. We know that. They just won the Super Bowl. But I think the one thing we have to remember is New Orleans, and we talked about it a lot last year, if you look at every position, they are very talented as a team. Their offensive line, they've got a lot of talent. They've got a lot of players on defense. The big key is going to be, is Sean Payton the quarterback whisperer, where he can turn Jameis Winston from a turnover machine into an efficient quarterback? If he plays efficiently, New Orleans is going to challenge to win the division. If he plays efficiently, they will win 10 or 11 games. If he plays like he did in Tampa, they'll win 7 or 8 because they'll be inconsistent from week to week. I think New Orleans has the best chance of anybody to unseat Tampa. I don't think it's likely to happen, but I think they have a chance. Carolina, I think, is going in the right direction. I'm very excited to see how Darnold does in a better environment, better coaching. Let's see how he does. I liked a lot of what he did in college. And even last year, there were 2 or 3 games I thought he played very well. So I think Carolina's got a chance. Atlanta, I agree with you. They have Matt Ryan and consistency. But beyond Matt Ryan, that team is hurting in a lot of spots. But I think that's a team that you could see upset a few people this year. But I still think it's Tampa and New Orleans are the top 2 dogs in that division, in my opinion.
Okay, fair enough. Kyle Pitts making some highlight plays, fun to watch here during the preseason. All right, the toughest division, Russ, in my opinion, is the NFC West. There's actually talking heads out in the media debating whether or not all 4 teams can make the playoffs here. And I'm talking about the Arizona Cardinals, Los Angeles Rams, Seattle Seahawks, and San Francisco 49ers. Wow. What a loaded division. How do you see it unfolding, Russ?
Personally, I don't think 4 teams have a realistic chance. I think there's a lot of hype around the Rams, and I understand why. They have a lot of good defensive players. They've added Matt Stafford. Putting him with Sean McVay, I think, gives them a real chance to have a high-powered offense. So I think if you're going to gamble, they're probably the team that could be the best, but it's not a sure thing. There's some real risk there. I think Seattle, to me, they're sort of like the Steelers of the NFC. Everybody sort of discredits them, and then what do? They go win 10, 9, 11 games every year, and they get in the playoffs. And I think Seattle, again, is going to be not a great team, but they'll be a good team. San Francisco is the wild card because 3 years ago, we're talking Super Bowl, but 4 of the 5 years that Shanahan's been the head coach, I think they've missed the 3 of the 4 years or 4 of the 5 years, they've missed the playoffs. They need to get things righted this year. A lot of it is the quarterback, but they still got to get the team going in the right direction. I personally don't see it in Arizona. Maybe I'm crazy, but I think that team's going to be a 4 to 5 win team again and miss out on the playoffs, or maybe 6 or 7 wins, but I don't see them as a playoff team. I think it'll be the 3rd year in a row that Kyler Murray misses the playoffs.
Well, that'll be an interesting storyline. I am a Cardinals fan. I like the veteran additions. I think J.J. Watt's going to add some juice. I think there's just enough gas left in that tank to help rejuvenate the Cardinals defense. And then on offense, you know, what people don't realize about the Cardinals, they have one of the more balanced attacks. If you look at the pass to run ratio, what they have in Chase Edmonds and James Conner, you know, people see James Conner thinking that's the big name there. Chase Edmonds is such a tough, rugged, ready runner, fresh tread on those tires. He has not been used extensively there. He's just been waiting patiently for his time to pounce. You may have heard some glimmer and some, flashes here and there, but now is, I believe, Chase Edmonds' time to step up. He's a multifaceted back, run, pass, block. Yeah, pride of Fordham.
Yeah, no, he's really a good player. I just don't know if they have the pieces. The offensive line, to me, is a major question mark.
Well, that's what it comes down to, the health of Kyler Murray. They got to keep him upright.
And they got to prove that offense isn't
over.
Predictable. I've heard a lot of people tell me around the league that it's a pretty predictable offense if you're a defensive coordinator.
I don't know. The first half of the season, it seemed like they were scoring a lot of points, so I don't know how predictable it was. I think when he got injured and was secluded to the pocket, sure, it was predictable because he didn't have that mobility, but I thought the Cardinals caught a lot of people off guard. Maybe I'm wrong. We'll see. I tell you this, at plus 575 to win the division, that's worth the roll of the dice, in my opinion. I think they have the ammunition to do that. The Rams, on paper, are the favorites at plus 180. The 49ers, surprisingly, at plus 200. To your point, Russ, all they do is count out the Seahawks. They have the Seahawks pegged for 3rd, with the Cardinals coming in a distant 4th. We mentioned Larry Fitzgerald's birthday today, 38 years old. Looks like we've seen the last of Larry Fitzgerald. And then some great people sharing birthdays today. Tom Coughlin, Jim Fossil, Jim Finks, Dennis Byrd, all born on this August 31st as we wind it down here. Before we get
something you may not know there, Rick.
Yeah.
Jim Finks came a vote or 2 away from being the commissioner as opposed to Paul Tagliabue.
Wow.
Yeah. Way back when, the vote was close. He was up to be that guy. A lot of people really wanted that guy, a former executive with the team, and it was very close. But I think it was Tagliabue who beat him out. And obviously Tagliabue did some great things, so probably the right move. But Jim Finks, a great GM, great football guy, and great person. But he came very close to being the commissioner.
Yeah, one of the greatest GMs of all time. Some great names there. How about let's talk CFL here quickly, just get an overview. Saskatchewan looks like still the only undefeated team. Chris O'Leary, by the way, will be with us tomorrow to talk more CFL. By the way, I was watching the Winnipeg-Calgary game. I don't know if you saw this one. Crazy ending.
Yeah.
Our guy Jake Mayer back at it again. I think he was like 30 of 36, 300+ yards passing. I thought they were going to pull it off at the end. But Winnipeg comes back, they exchange field goals, and they come out on top. That was a really good one. I know Montreal, you guys had a tough loss, but where's your finger on the pulse here with 3 or 4 weeks in of CFL action?
Well, firstly, just it's amazing the fan excitement and how much the fans are getting into it. It's great to see. But for those people, and you and I always talk about lessons, teaching people, for those people who want to work in this business and really feel that you once you learn to do it, you never make mistakes, and you're great and you're a Hall of Famer. The quarterback, Jake Mayer, that you just mentioned, I rejected him. I graded this guy and thought he cannot be a starting quarterback in the CFL. So clearly at this point, after 2 games where he has looked maybe not great, but he has looked awfully good for his first 2 starts in the CFL, that one, it looks like I might have missed on. So it's important to remember in this business, if you can't realize you're going to be wrong and admit when you're wrong, you're not going to last. On a side note, I do not believe in this rule. If the penalty is called but the play goes on, you don't reward a team for screwing up and delaying the game. They missed the game-winning field goal. And then they say, oh, but you didn't get the field goal off in time. We're going to move you back 10 yards to get into the shot. It should be no. Why shouldn't the other team be able to decline that penalty? Why do you reward a team for committing a penalty? I've always thought that, and false starts by the offense where they get a sack or an interception. Why do you reward a team for making a mistake? That's something I've always felt should be changed. I'd love to see that fixed.
Yeah, that was a wild ending that played out in favor of the defending champions. And, to your credit, though, you're not a West Coast scout going into UC Davis. And they have a staffer there that's been there for 40 years, Russ. I swear to God. And Dan Hawkins was his head coach who raved about him. He said, oh, he's the coach's son. He's so cerebral. He's like having a coach on the field. They always say that. Then there's a guy there that's been there. He goes, you know who he reminds me of, who also played at UC Davis? Chris Peterson.
Well, there you go.
I said, how long you been here, coach? He goes, 40 years. But a dinker, a dunker that manage the game and steer the ship.
Yeah, I give him credit. He's played a lot better than I thought. I mean, when I watched film of him, I questioned his arm strength and his accuracy. And he's clearly, I still don't think he has a big arm, but he has a good enough arm, and he's played very well in these first 2 games. So we'll see how it turns out. Much better than I anticipated, that's for sure.
Believe it or not, I saw Jake Meyer and Josh Love when he was at San Jose State in consecutive days, back to back. I gave him almost an identical grade. They were that close. So, but I agree. I didn't have Mayer as an NFL type. Wasn't sure with the CFL interest, but hey, that's the beauty of scouting, because it only takes one to believe in you, right? So, all right. I know Montreal, you guys had a tough one against Hamilton, 27-10. Saskatchewan, still 3-0. What's your take with what you're seeing from the Allouettes? Are the Rough Riders the team to beat here, do you think?
I don't know if they're the team to beat. I mean, obviously, they're undefeated at this point. I still think Winnipeg is a really, really good team, and Hamilton's a talented team. I think the big thing for us is just we've made some improvements. We just got to get a little bit more consistent. I'm very confident that Coach Jones, Kahari Jones, our head coach, and his staff, they're doing what's necessary to move us in the right direction. It's better to go through adversity early and improve as the season goes on than peak at the beginning and struggle with things going forward. So I'm excited by where we stand in terms of our coaching staff and the talent we have. I think we just have to overcome some of these small hiccups, and we're going to be where we need to be.
Very early in the season, a lot of football left to be played here. All right, Russ, we covered a lot of ground. We talked about Deshaun Watson. We talked about Trent Dilfer shenanigans, Bishop Sycamore. What a wild story that was. Some wild division predictions from Russell and myself. He likes the Patriots, folks. We're going to come back and revisit that.
I can't tell you that they're going to win. I don't know what you just did there.
We're trying to work the magic. Can you hear us, Russ?
I hear you, brother.
All right. Well, we're getting out of here. I guess the 10 o'clock
hour. I'm two places at once. They want to pull us, yank our chain all the time at 10 o'clock on the spot. But it's been another hour of power. I know Tom texted me that the official announcement will be coming soon. It could be later today. It could be tomorrow. Make sure you tune in for the State of Football tomorrow for that. We'll also have Madre London from the European League of Football, former Michigan State running back. I think he might have finished at Tennessee. We'll have him on the show talking L football. We'll have Chris O'Leary talking CFL. Of course, Amanda Ruler, the McMaster strength coach, assistant football coach, former Hub coach. And I think on that note, we'll talk a little bit about Hub. Can we talk about the Scout school experience, Russ, or is it sold out already?
That I don't know if it's sold out, because I think right now they're waiting for the announcement. And once that's announced, then we'll be ready to roll in terms of how many people can sign up. But I'm excited. It's going to be a chance to really do some live teaching. I've been doing, obviously, the stuff online for SMWW for many years, and I think that's a great starter way to get in and learn about it. But when we do the scout camp, it's really going to be come out there. We're going to watch film each time of a position. First, we're going to probably start with running backs and just sort of get in the nitty gritty, spend 30 to 45 minutes and watch running backs and sort of talk about the finer points of playing the position, what it takes to play professional football. Also teach them about how do you measure guys. It may seem rudimentary, but I can tell you, learning how to properly measure height and hand and wing and arm span matters. When you go to different events, you're going to have to do this when you're a professional scout, along with showing them how to give the Wonderlic to people and talking about the proper ways to interview guys. So it's really an in-person experience that first night. And the next night you go out on the field, or next day you go out on the field, and I'll give you sort of my grid that I use for when I chart players live and sort of take notes to sort of give you an idea of how scouts do it, how best to look at stuff live. So it's going to be a great experience. I'm very excited, and I'll be probably flying in from Montreal for that. So it'll be a good 2-day break from Canada.
Very nice. I'm looking forward to it. And, you can find more information on the hubfootball.com website. That's if you want to participate in the Hub Scout School featuring Russell Lande. That's if you want to register as a player and be evaluated for consideration for the Hub football camp. We took 66 players last event, about 500 or 600 applications. And I'll say this one thing. I just want to say this real quick. I know, Samantha, we're going overtime, but if you're a player and you're registering, just tell the truth, because we have your verified measurements. I had a guy today, for example, that I was ready to give my vote yes. I thought he was a very good player, worthy of an invite. He lists himself as a 6'2" corner. I go back, he measured in 5'11" at his pro day. That was verified. So he just cost him my vote anyway. To me, he was a yes. I put no. And maybe the good folks at Hub or Tom Goodhines have a kinder heart than I do, but this is a cold-hearted business. And I pick players, even though I don't work for a team. You can't play for me if you lie. So I can't vouch for you. I don't want you on my team. Just get out of here. And so don't be that guy. And that's the lesson that I will provide for this Tutorial Tuesday. Tell the truth. We have the measurements. Don't cost yourself a spot. And so somebody did that this morning. I felt bad for him, but I didn't. You know what I mean? So, hey, we're trying to provide opportunities, but don't take advantage of the situation. It's Rick Serritella. It's Russell Lande. It's the State of Football. It's Samantha behind the scenes. This was Season 2, Episode 21, Part 280 on this Tuesday, August 31st. We'll see you tomorrow, everybody.
soft-spoken and strong-willed. The